Good morning. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are tuning in from. Welcome to the latest wonderful event, The Art of Balancing a Traditional 9 to 5 with Travel, which is something that I know a lot of us in this group have to do. If you do not know me, my name is Jessica Poitvien. I'm a freelance travel writer and content creator with more than a decade of experience. I have bylines in travel and leisure, Condé Nast Traveler, Photos Travel, and more. And when I'm not traveling or writing, you can find me baking, binging my favorite series, usually on Netflix, and exploring South Florida, which is my current home base. I know that we have people tuning in from a lot of different locations, so please introduce yourself in the chat. Tell us where you're from. Let us know, do you currently work a full-time job? Are you looking for a full-time job? Are you having trouble balancing and that's why you're here? You want to travel more? Let us know in the comments. We want to hear from you all. And we have a great panel coming up with some incredible women who know how to balance travel and work. All right, we have one person here is telling us they're from Atlanta. Hello from Atlanta. Not too far from me here in South Florida. Anyone else? We are still waiting for more people to trickle in, but in the meantime, just some rundown of how things are going to go today. Please feel free to put your questions in the chat as we start going along with the presentation, and we will have a Q&A period at the end. We have somebody from Boston working full-time, traveling to Brazil for work this weekend and taking extra time for me. Very nice. We love a combo of a work and vacation trip. I do that pretty often myself. Someone else also from Boston. Hello. North Dakota, a student looking for a full-time job. Welcome. Hello from Los Angeles. Hi, Nicole. You're currently looking for a job, hopefully one where you can travel. That's the dream, right? To have that job that allows you to work and travel. We have Brooke from Seattle. Ooh, we have someone tuning in from Finland. I knew we had different time zones going on here, so very exciting. Someone from Mexico City, Chicago. We have a good representation here. Oh, someone from South Africa. Welcome. Very excited to have all of you here. We have someone from Charlotte, current 9 to 5er who wants to balance more travel with her current role. Well, you are in the perfect place because that is exactly what we're going to talk about. And before we get into introducing the panelists and speaking on this topic, I want to take a moment to introduce Wonderful. So if you haven't heard of Wonderful before, welcome. We are a group of thousands of women travelers and travel content creators based all around the world. And our goal is to help make travel better for women worldwide. You can catch us in over 50 cities where we're regularly hosting local events, and we have an enormous online network so you can tap into the sisterhood wherever you are in the world during your travels. We're all about opening the world up and lifting barriers for women, which is why we love hosting free events and open online events just like this one to help you grow. So that's just a little bit about Wonderful and why we're all here today. And without further ado, I want to introduce our panelists. I'm very excited for this group. First up, we have Anissa. She is a traveler by passion, writer by choice, and teacher by vocation. Anissa works full-time as an expatriate teacher, teaching high school psychology, and she's also taught in 7 different countries. In between her career and education, Anissa showcases her travels across the globe as Expat Panda, sharing resources to encourage women with weak passports to travel and or teach abroad. Welcome, Anissa. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. And next up, we have Kay Kingsman. Kay is a fiction author, travel writer, and blogger at The Awkward Traveler who focuses on making travel more relatable, inclusive, and accessible to the everyday dreamer. Through storytelling, Kay uplifts local voices and interviews about their culture and highlights the sometimes heavy history that the industry so often forgets. Welcome, Kay. Thank you so much for joining us. And we also have Sojourner White. She is a remote social worker, award winning travel journalist, and trained travel queen. Hailing from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, she has been a digital nomad and called both Spain and Germany home. Through her platform, Sojourneys, she helps 9 to 5ers fulfill their career goals and bucket list dreams to find freedom and flexibility outside the office. Welcome, Sojourner. Thank you so much for joining us as well.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I'm excited to have all of you here because I've been a fan of your content. So I know that you work hard, you create content also diligently, and somehow you manage to balance it all. So let's jump right in. I want to start with the basics first so that everyone listening in can have an idea of what is your work setup, right? Are you hybrid? Are you remote? Do you go in the office every day? And how many vacation days do you have to work with in between that schedule? Want to start, Anissa? You're on my right, so I'll start with
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
I knew that was coming. As you said, I'm a teacher. So I am full time in the classroom. Workday starts at 7:45. Technically ends at 3:30. As you know, teachers get a very admirable amount of leave. I think we have about 10 to 12 weeks off per year. And that's a great thing, having that amount of vacation time. But the bad part is that's when everybody's traveling. Like, there's no option to go in an off peak season. You have to take your leave when it's school holidays. And so that brings with its own set of challenges, traveling when every single other person and their grandma and their baby is also traveling.
Yeah, I can imagine. There's no down season for you.
Nope.
And Kay, what's your situation like?
So I work in research and development at a tech company, and I work a compressed schedule. So I work longer hours, but less days of the week. So for 3 to 4 days a week, I work 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. or 20. I'm not good with the other way of telling time. But so I work about like 40 to 48 hours a week, but I do have 3 and 4 day weekends. And then in general, I have 21 days of vacation. But since I don't work the whole week, that kind of stretches longer.
So you have every weekend is either a 3-day weekend or a 4-day weekend for you.
Right. And if I want to take a whole week off, it only uses 3 days off compared to like taking 5 days off.
5 days. Okay.
And I do work full time in the office. I'm at home right now because I'm in a meeting, but usually I'm on campus.
That's part of the balance, right?
Right.
Taking meetings, appointments, things like that. And Sojourner, how about you? What is your setup like?
Yeah, so I'm currently in my childhood room. So I live at home when I'm not traveling. I'm based in Milwaukee. So I am remote, but most of us, or I think all of our team now, is based in Milwaukee. So we do have some like in person things every now and again. Like our retreats tend to be in person unless it's wintertime. Then none of us kind of want to be like going outside in Wisconsin. But other than that, we do have like quarterly retreats and we do have like some conferences and things. I would say I'm about 90% remote and then 10% is just work travel. I'm a social worker, but I work in the social work like research and evaluation part of social work. So that does require us to kind of go based on where we have projects in different cities in the US. So there is some like work travel on top of it outside of retreats, but that's my current setup. And I think it's like 6 to 7 weeks off throughout the year. So we have different chunks kind of spaced out. Sometimes it is when everybody else is traveling, and then some weeks it is also when most people aren't traveling too. And then we have unlimited PTO as well, and we also have like some self-care days built into there. So it's a very dynamic kind of schedule that makes it pretty nice at this point. because I did not always have a 9 to 5 that was this flexible for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say, especially, from a US perspective, that's pretty rare to have so much PTO. I know it's becoming more popular these days, the unlimited PTO and things like that, but I know my first few jobs I had 10 vacation days and that was it, and that seems to be quite the norm, at least in the US, which we all know is an overworked and under vacationed nation. But keeping in mind, your different work setups, how do you maximize your limited vacation days? Do you have any tips or tricks to kind of stretch your PTO a bit longer? As we can start with Kay
I,
this time. Or
oh, okay. No. That's fine. Go ahead, Kay.
Okay, I'll jump in. So even before I had my current job, I kind of gravitated towards having a compressed schedule. So before I worked in a lab, minimum wage, but I did advocate to have a 3-day weekend every week. So I would just work slightly longer hours. So then I would just have a built-in longer weekend. And back then that really helped because I didn't have paid time off. So even just having an extra day at home felt kind of like a vacation, and you kind of like stretch your time a little bit more, especially when you're not getting paid to not be at work. And now that has kind of continued with my built-in compressed schedule. So I have 3 weeks of vacation, but because I don't work 5 days a week, that does stretch my time off more. So I am every year I can have about 6 weeks off, just because I don't work 5 days a week.
Mm-hmm. So you combine maybe your vacation days on a week that you have, let's say, a 4-day weekend, and then you take 2 days off to make it a little bit longer without using all your PTO.
Yeah, and even just traveling on my long weekends, that's like a good chunk of time to like travel domestically or see a new city. So that helps as well without using my actual PTO.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And Anissa, I know I accidentally cut you off there. So how about you? How do you, any tips for maximizing your vacation time?
Yeah, I think with me, it's not really about like stretching it out because I don't really have that option, but it is about using my time in the best way possible. So at like the beginning of the academic year, because the academic year usually runs from end of August to end of June, I try to sit down and plan out where I want to go. And sometimes I have to compromise in terms of destination. So I've gone to a lot of popular places during winter just because there's only so much that of like crowds that I can deal with, especially like post pandemic. So I try to be organized. I try to plan in advance. And for me, especially like because I have a week passport, I also have to plan in advance because I need time to organize documents for visas and things like that. So I'm rarely ever gonna do like a spontaneous trip. And yeah, that's just the way I operate. It's been successful for me.
And how about you, Sojourner?
Yeah, it's funny now because I have a list of places that like I like want to work remotely from possibly. I'm not someone who likes to be on the go all the time. Like I'm not a month to month remote worker. That's not my jam personally. So I may do like a week of remote work and then I'll sandwich that with like I know I have one of my breaks, so I have a week of like a trip so I can kind of be there for a little bit and then just be like a solo traveler for the other part. So that's kind of how I use mine because I think people hear 6 or 7 weeks and it is exciting to have that much time off. I also don't want to be traveling for all of my breaks. I really do enjoy like relaxing and like because traveling is great, but also traveling takes a lot of time and takes a lot of energy. And so I kind of find the balance within that. So I may not travel for all of my breaks. I may just travel for like a few and then use our other days off to sandwich shorter trips. I'm really big on train travel now, and those take a bit more to plan because they're like scenic rides, and I have to decide, well, if I book a train ride, do I want to actually experience the city or like do I want to just kind of go on somewhere else or go back home? So there is a bit of planning, but I kind of sandwich in a different way, but similar to Kay, if I have a long weekend, I may just add another day onto it if I'm not using a break. And then if I want to work remotely and visit a place, I'll just spend like an extended time there because I'm not currently like paying rent. So I have a little bit more flexibility to stay somewhere a bit longer if I wanted to with a remote job.
Yeah. And you bring up a really good point that vacation days and PTO is not only for travel. We have personal responsibilities, other things that we have to take care of, or just simply wanting to rest, like that on the go constantly isn't for everybody. So you bring up a really, really good point, important point with that. And I know for me personally, before I was a freelancer and I was working a more traditional 9 to 5, anytime there was a holiday weekend, I would always try to leave before the holiday weekend. So Thanksgiving, that was my favorite week. I would leave on the Friday before the Thursday and just take 3 days off of work. And then, I had those extra days kind of built in. So I know combining with holidays that you are already given off is definitely a good strategy. What about for longer trips? Is that, if you want to if you want to go farther and destinations that maybe take a bit more time, like Sojourner, you were mentioning that with train travel, that inherently takes a little bit more time than just flying to a destination. Is there anything, or even keeping in mind in the days when you had less vacation time, less PTO to play with, were there any tricks that you used to kind of make sure that you were able to get to maybe those farther bucket list destinations?
Yeah, I was really big on sandwiching. Like I think Memorial Day is also like one of my favorites to travel because some people like at least in the US it's a like big cookout culture. So people travel but kind of not as much for Memorial Day. So I know that was a holiday I used to always try to plan something around. And even like I took the train ride to Portland. I actually went to go visit Kay, but I had already been to Portland. So it wasn't like I had to plan extended time. So it really depends with the train ride, kind of where it's ending. I'm planning a longer trip to Peru later this year, and they do actually have a train down there, and it takes like the whole day. So I think the other part about doing longer trips and being also a train traveler is like, okay, what other activity am I going to sacrifice for a train ride? Because generally they're like at least 8 hours long, 8 to 10 hours minimum, even for like a day trip. So I kind of plan all that out. And so what you were saying earlier, like I'm taking the Friday before off. So I have a day to like travel because I booked a cheap flight, which means I have a layover, a very long layover. So like I also kind of leave the Friday before. So I feel like if you want to be somewhere by a certain day, Friday is like not is people don't say leave on Fridays, like they say leave on a Thursday or a Wednesday, but realistically, like some people can't do that, but if you can, that's what I would also do. So if there was some place where I would say longer than like a week, I would then have to use like some PTO days and just leave on a Wednesday. So I had like maybe 12 days instead of like 7 or something like that. So definitely sandwiching and also doing the shoulder season as well, like traveling in shoulder season, which is the season between high season and like off season. Like you get the high season like amenities without like people will be there. Unlike in off season, it's kind of like lower. So shoulder season also a great time. You may get a little rain or something like that,
Yeah.
but one rainy day means you kind of hang out and relax on your trip too.
Get a different perspective of the destination as well. Anyone else want to chime in on that longer trip before we move on to the next question? Very good. All right, perfect. So something else that I know a lot of people struggle with is even asking for time off, especially women, when we're kind of socialized to be nice and not push any boundaries and things like that. Or if you have the misfortune of dealing with a really intimidating or unapproachable boss. Have any of you dealt with that situation? And if you have, how did you deal with it? How, any tips on approaching some maybe a difficult situation to ask for time off?
I think in this situation, it helps to talk it over with someone first before you ask. So, like, talk to someone you trust at work and be like, this is what I want. How do you think I can phrase it? You know this person. I know this person. How do you think they'll react? Just so that you can mentally prepare yourself for that conversation. And I know Sojourner was talking about sandwiching, and I think about sandwiching in a very different way. Like perhaps going in, talking about what you've done, asking for your leave, and then talking about what you're going to do when you come back. So, number one, it's setting the foundation for what you've already contributed, asking for what you want, and then saying what value you're still going to bring to the company when you do return. So that's how I kind of think of sandwiching in this particular context.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? I think that's a great tip, by the way. It's like when you're trying to deliver quote unquote bad news, you start with the good, and then you lay in the bad, and then you end with some good. And I think that definitely works in the workplace, especially if you show your boss, look, I'm not gonna leave and totally drop the ball here. Things will be taken care of.
And it's also a great way to kind of show that you have contributed to the company and you do want to show longevity. So why can't you just grant me what I ask for, you know? And this is a great technique I use at work with my students. Like, you can't tell the student your work is trash. You have to sandwich it between two nice things. So yeah, that's where I got it from.
Yeah, no, that's very true. You can't break their spirits. How about Kay, Sojourner? Have you ever dealt with that kind of situation?
So I can chime in here, and this doesn't necessarily apply to me because I am somewhat of a bully at work to my manager. Like I am the intimidator, but I think one thing that helps is to have a conversation with your manager before you want to travel, just to set the expectations of how PTO works in your group, what the expectations are. So if you need to request time off a certain amount of days before, or if you need to have certain things in place. And that's helpful just so you know you've checked all the boxes so that when you request the time off, your manager can't really say anything about it. I personally work in a team. So even if I have the PTO available, we can only have one person off in our team at a time. So all of our work gets completed. So there's also a little bit of negotiation with, our teammates. Like, okay, you have kids, you want to take spring break off. That's cool. I'm going to be off the week after, and just making sure everyone on the team is on the same page. And that maybe not everyone takes the same holiday off because you kind of want to rotate the good days off. So that's another thing that helps with kind of the anxiety of asking time off. If you know your team's okay with it, you're following the guidelines for asking for PTO off, then in theory, everything should be good. But if not, if you work not in a team, you're kind of like your own project person, just making sure you have either your work completed before, or you have a game plan of how your work will still be completed even though you are off. And that will kind of alleviate some worries about potentially you not being on shift.
I'll add to similar to what they have both shared. Really, also it's my coworkers, because if I'm off, chances are somebody's filling in meetings for me or leading the meetings. So also I manage projects and people too. I'm a director, so I have a lot of other little things that I do that generally people who I manage wouldn't handle. So I kind of have two teams to talk to and align as well. And I feel like that's really important because you don't want to set somebody up to look a certain way in a meeting or feel unprepared. So I always kind of make sure too, they're like, hey y'all, I'm about to do this thing. I'll make sure I have all this thing set up for you. We'll schedule time to go over it so y'all know what's going on and can handle it too, because that builds resentment in the culture. And so you may come back to team members who don't like you and that's not fun. So I think that's a good part of like setting up. And generally, at least where I work currently, like people are pretty open to like, okay, girl, take your time, like we got it kind of situation. But I think people need to be like secure and kind of know that like, okay, I can do this thing. Like
Mm-hmm.
she didn't leave me hanging before she booked that flight. So I
Mm-hmm.
feel prepared. And also I do stuff a month in ahead of time and I'll let them know too. Like the more time, the better, to kind of make sure that it's all good. But similar to Kay, we've had a few directors out at the same time, but we try not to be all out at once, or like, or maybe half us in, half of us out, just to make sure that there are folks around. But we have a good team, so there's a lot of trust there too.
That's good. And it seems like I see some comments that are kind of reiterating what you're all saying, saying try not to do it at the last minute. Make sure you have cover. Don't leave things undone. You don't want to totally leave your team hanging and create some kind of, just bad environment and ill will towards you for taking time off and kind of messing things up for everybody else. And I think, just throw in my own 2 cents at the same time, something that I've always told myself is that if I die tomorrow, they will replace me by the next week. So nothing, unless you are a brain surgeon performing life-saving surgeries, there's probably wiggle room to work things out, and the world will not end. And I think so many people are afraid of taking their PTO and end up leaving PTO unused at the end of the year out of that sort of fear. But we're all just worker bees at the end of the day to these people. So you have to take care of yourself and your own needs, and keeping yourself happy as well. We don't want to, throw anybody under the bus. We want to be considerate, but still make sure that you're looking out for yourself, for sure. Let's see. So something else that I have noticed a lot, and I'm sure that you all have also noticed, in the online travel communities in general, there are a lot of conversations about, just quit your job, just start your own business, go move and to Bali and travel the world and do all these like lovely things. I'm sure we've all seen these tropes floating around on the internet. And I think that the main thing that's missing from that conversation is that sometimes people want to keep their 9-to-5 jobs, and they have a variety of reasons for wanting to keep their 9-to-5. And there are lots of benefits that come from that as well. So I wanted to hear from you all. What would you say are the benefits of having a 9-to-5 while balancing travel? Why do you do it?
I can start. I see this a lot, and I always think it's people who don't know like travel. I'll say from like travel influencer perspective and the travel entrepreneurs, like it's a hustle. If you ever talk to them for real, like it's not as like, I mean, it's great you to travel and do all these things, but they be working, like working. And I think that is, unless you like know people, like people who I know in the travel space who talk about being entrepreneurs, they don't sugarcoat it. So like for me, I've never had that kind of like fantasy, but I see those articles all the time of like, I worked corporate for 3 years and quit my job, travel the world. Well, yeah, because you work corporate. Like that's a different kind of money than like the average person who works in a nonprofit. And for me, I'm in a Midwest city. Like those salaries over here just don't exist for real. So yeah, I feel like there's a lot of benefits, especially being like having it as a side hustle right now, or like being like a business that I do essentially part time. Like algorithms change a lot. And so you're like relying on that. If you don't have multiple streams of income, like it can be a lot as an entrepreneur. But with a 9-to-5, I still know a paycheck's coming, whether or not I post Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or like have a content calendar. Like there's still a level of security, like to an extent, obviously, in a 9-to-5 that you kind of don't have. Because like if you're like a solopreneur as well, which a lot of people in the travel space start out as that, right? Then if you're not working, the work isn't getting done because you don't have the help and like getting help is great, but it also costs money. So it's like a cycle as well. So it's not something to take lightly. Which right now, I personally believe in not rushing my season, and my season is full time employment while also doing things on the side until I decide one day maybe it's not. But there's a lot of benefits kind of building what you want to do, so that if you decide to go the full time entrepreneur route, then you have a nice foundation before kind of jumping all in. But it's balance. A 9 to 5 does bring a little bit of comfort right about now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think something else to mention, and I loved everything that Sojourner said, and I loved how she said that it's a hustle and it's work. Okay. And for me, I love travel as my downtime. I don't want that to be work. Like, I can do it, but I don't want to. So, for me, I'm really big on keeping that part of my life as leisure and keeping work as work. And then also from my own personal context, like being an expat teacher comes with a lot of other benefits that I'm not sure remote work could do for me, especially when I think of what I do. Like if I had to switch to teaching online, I just wouldn't have the benefits of like round trip flights every year to my home country, full-time world coverage, health insurance, like free accommodation, utilities reimbursed to a certain amount. Like I wouldn't have that. So it just doesn't make sense for me financially to ever quit my job and go eat a smoothie bowl in Bali. Like I wouldn't do that.
I can see the smoothie bowl in my head, but and both of you are making excellent points about the content creation or solopreneur. It is a lot of work, and I know when I first started out in the industry, in like the travel industry as a blogger and things like that, I got burnt out at one point because travel was my leisure thing, and then it became my work thing, and then there was no separation between the two. And even now as a freelance travel writer, that is my full-time job is freelance writing. There are times where I need to separate, like I very much make a distinction. No, this is a personal trip. It is way different than a work trip. It's a whole different vibe. And Kay, how about you? What are your motivations for your for staying?
Yeah.
Smiling because when we went traveling together, we spoke about this every day in the most sarcastic tone. We're like, let's just give up our jobs and do it full time. And then we're like, heck no.
Yeah. So, as someone with a chronic condition, my motivation is healthcare, because I'm not trying to pay if I have a flare up and need to go to a hospital, or paying full price for medications, lab work, all that stuff. And now that I have my mom as a dependent, it's like, I don't want me learning a TikTok dance to determine if I can pay for her rent. You know what I mean? Like, I like having the stability of knowing how much money I'm going to get every month, how much I need to budget for this. And also having things built into my full-time job, such as a 401k and stocks and all that fancy stuff, that if I were an entrepreneur, I would have to, figure it out myself and be like, oh yeah, I can't retire because I need this post to go viral. Like that's a level of stress that I don't want to deal with.
I'll also add to, like, I know people who do it in a sustainable way, right? But it's still like, I think people just forget it's work. Like it's still work. It doesn't matter. Like, no, like everyone has to make money in some capacity. And like I think it can get overshadowed by like the glitz and glamour. But if you talk to your favorite travel influencers, they will tell you like they are working and hustling. And to their point too, the health insurance is real, because we know the US healthcare system is not too hot. So to pay that out of pocket, I know for me also, I have like a financial advisor through my job too that's helped me understand IRAs and all this other stuff too. So there are a lot of other benefits that that are also tied to your employment, which whether or not you agree with they should be tied to your employment is a different conversation, but they're still very real expenses to think about. And so if that is your dream, like it's great. However, think about like what that realistically like looks like for you too, like to leave your 9 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I think going back to your question itself, the trope that I see a lot of is travel the world for free.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is free in this world.
Nothing.
You're paying with your content, with your time, with your effort, with your dignity sometimes. Like nothing is free, So
Yeah.
that's the part of that whole trope that really irritates me and I think creates unrealistic expectations.
Mm-hmm. I 100% agree because, so many times, how many times I've had to correct friends and family that when I go on a work trip, it is not a vacation. And until they travel with me and they see that, I'm writing from we get back from the activities and I'm writing from 8 p.m. to 1 a.m., waking up at 7 to start the next day of activities and then doing, you know what I mean? Or it's a lot of work, and it's like you said, nothing is free. So I see some people who will specify get paid to travel the world, so it implies that there is some kind of exchange of services or some kind of work being done, because that is the more honest way of portraying that. And I think with all of your points, it comes down to thinking of your individual situation, your what season you're in. I love that way that you phrased it, Sojourner, because it's, maybe for me right now, freelance writing is working out great. I'm enjoying the trips, I'm enjoying it. But later down the line, when I might need some more stable health care, if I decide that I want to start a family, if I decide that, I want to do other things in life, then a 9 to 5 and a consistent paycheck is going to start looking real good. So it really is a matter of, not letting those tropes that we see online get to us, and being realistic about what do you really want. Having that self-awareness, like you said, Kay, you're like, I don't want that stress, and that's self-awareness. So I appreciate all of your perspectives on that. And speaking also about, that balance and kind of separating leisure and work and things like that, all of you are incredibly impressive because you have your full-time jobs, you create content all consistently. I'm telling you, I'm an admirer of all three of you. And I imagine that you also have other normal adult responsibilities. So how do you manage it? How do you avoid burnout as well?
Well, for me, because this is not tied to my income and my social media is not my whole personality, if I don't feel like posting something, I won't. Like, I'm not going to push myself. And so I take time to be in a phase where I feel like sharing. And then if I don't feel like sharing for a few weeks, I don't.
Yeah, makes sense.
Oh, yeah, so I actually got burnt out at the end of last year. I was traveling for work, I had got a promotion, and then I was like traveling for fun across like 3 continents. I thought that was a good idea. It was beautiful, loved it down, but baby, afterwards, I was like, my body's like, girl, we cannot sustain this. So I think it's like being realistic with your work schedule too, and your personal schedule. Like, it's not just like make your life about work, but it's like how much can you like physically withstand? Like I went from doing like a work trips in the US to going to South Africa for like 10 days to going to California, then going to Mexico, then going to Guatemala in a matter of like 6 weeks. And that was ridiculous on my body. And so definitely listening to your health, listening to your body when it's like, haha, we're tired, lie down. Like, maybe you shouldn't go on that excursion after like you're working remotely, especially because as I said earlier, there are places that I want to like just visit for fun without working remote, and places I would like to work remote from maybe for a few days before I like go out and visit and see the sights and everything. I think having that distinction of like this is a pure like enjoyment trip and this is like a work remote like then travel kind of trip has helped me be a better planner because I hear my vacation time, I get real excited. And so I don't want that excitement to lead to burnout, personally.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to quickly welcome Tanya. Thank you for joining us. She is another expert that we welcome here to talk about that balance between travel, content creation, life, and everything. Tanya, I don't know if you heard the last question that I asked, or if you want to jump in and introduce yourself real quick and
Yeah,
and
sure.
talk on the topic a little bit.
First off, I'm so sorry. I got pulled into a work meeting and it seriously overran. But I ran here as soon as I could. So I'm Tonia. I'm a travel content creator from London. Loads of like adventure travel, pretty much all kinds of travel. And I also have a 9 to 5. So often feels like I just have 2 full-time jobs that I'm balancing really poorly, which is why I'm late. But yeah.
Well, that's the reality, right? Is that sometimes that 9 to 5 things pop up, and I'm glad that you were able to join us, because we were actually just speaking about something that you could probably touch on quite a lot, is the work that really goes behind content creation, and how it's not all fun and games, glitz and glam, and how do you balance it? And also, some people might look at you and say, you're very successful, why don't you just do that full time, as opposed to having this balance, or having to balance with a 9 to 5 job.
Quite a loaded question. I say that how I balance it is I take breaks when needed. Like I often take social media breaks, even though like on the outside it seems like the page is very successful. If I do feel like I'm burning out and I need a break, I will honestly just leave the page for as long as I feel necessary. Like it is a lot working sort of 8 hours at my 9 to 5 and then like 4 or 5 hours on my social media every day. I'm often sort of asked why I haven't just left. And I think it's more so something within myself. Like I'll go when I feel ready to go. Like I enjoy my 9 to 5 work and I also enjoy my content creation, which has probably made it harder for me to actually just be like, yeah, I'm leaving. I don't need this anymore. But for the moment, I think I've done quite well at juggling it, and I'm going to continue to do so until I feel like I'm ready to leave.
That's perfect. We were talking about that. You don't have to rush any season of life. If you like your job, why quit? Perfect. Well, we were just talking about, again, managing things, avoiding burnout. Kay, did you have anything that you wanted to add on that topic?
Yeah, I think one thing that helps me avoid burnout is that because content creation is not an income source for me, I can create the content that I feel like creating. So that might be a blog. It's usually a blog post because I like writing, but it's like I don't feel pressured to create a reel or do this, or even like I don't feel pressured to deliver a blog post within a certain amount of time because I don't have to. And I can do the things content wise that I enjoy, because even if it doesn't, come off successfully, it's something that I enjoy doing. And I can do it at my own pace. So I think having my 9 to 5 like supplement or being my source of income alleviates a lot of pressure that usually comes with creating content. And then I personally haven't experienced burnout with content creation, but I think that is because I go at my own pace, and like if I don't feel like doing it, I don't do it.
I'll add too that like when it does come time for me, like if I do a train ride and I want to share it, I use like Notion to like plan it out so that I can just knock it out in like 1 week or something like that. So I also don't think you should. I know people will say like as creators you should be posting every day. Never doing that, babes. Like never posting every day. Like there's not a bone in my body right now that could like muster up that kind of content creation. So like for me, that would just like that's not sustainable. I think like if you want to balance your 9 to 5 as a creator, you kind of have to know what you're capable of and like what's your like what's sustainable for you. So if posting once a week, if that's how you want to get started, go right ahead, post once a week. You do twice, 3 times, or whatever. But to everyone's point, don't feel obligated to post, especially if you like it's not something that like you're like it's not making money for you, or it feels burdensome. Like just don't do it. Like I promise you, people there are going to be just fine. Like they're going to be just fine, and they will appreciate you when you come back from your social media break.
Yes, the world will not forget you in the meantime. Which sometimes it feels like they might, you know what I mean? There's that pressure. And kind of along the same lines, because we are talking about the difference between leisure travel, work travel, and making sure that you're not burning yourself out, is there anything that you do in particular to make sure that you're truly disconnecting when you are on vacation, and not just from the content creation but also from your 9 to 5 job? I know sometimes people will be answering work emails on vacation, but is there anything that you do to make sure that you can truly disconnect and enjoy your travels?
I think for me personally, there's two things that I do. I never have my work emails on my phone. Now, I know that this is not feasible for a lot of people, but for me, it is feasible, and I'm definitely not going to have them on my phone. So when I'm out of the country, away from my work laptop, like that's it. Work is dead to me. And then the other thing that I do is like I don't put myself under pressure to be posting, while I'm on a trip. And I think a lot of content creators do this. Like, yes, I'll take some photos, take some videos, but after a certain point in time, you just put your phone down and you just are in that moment. And then usually when I'm at the airport or when I'm on the plane ride, I start kind of putting things together, and I'll be in my classroom posting like I'm poolside somewhere and I'm behind my desk. So those are two things for me that I do to really give myself a break, because as I mentioned earlier, travel for me is leisure and I want to keep it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go next. I'm also very strictly like no work when I schedule time off. In fact, I will be like, do not contact me. That is time card fraud. I'm not answering anything. And then I also make sure there is a point of contact in place. So if I am needed, they know where to go because it's not me. And then in terms of creating content while I'm traveling, I kind of do the same thing as Anissa, where I don't really post in real time. One, because I'm busy traveling, but also I like to kind of like craft a story when I'm posting on social media, and that takes time. So I probably do the same where I wait until I'm either almost, away from the vacation, like in an airplane, on a train ride, whatever. I'm not on a train ride, but or I just wait until I'm back at work, because the best time to create content is when I'm getting paid. So I just do it at my desk. Like right now, I'm technically on the clock. I'm in a meeting. They don't know.
We love the multitasking.
I'm crying because I've tried to convince Kay to come on a train ride with me, so she needs to come on a train ride. But yeah, the out of office up, baby, by whatever day before, don't bother me, and to put in the email, okay. And I'm the person. I'm like, thank you for reaching out. Here's how to contact me, and like I give a little different like TV show recommendations or stuff like that in my email. Like, while you're waiting, like check out this podcast and stuff like that to let you know I am not there. Like I am not in the office. I do that. Talking about our team, like talking to my team members, make sure I do have a contact for that. And then I do not post in real time. I'm often solo, and even when I'm with people, I don't like posting in real time for real. So like I'm often never posting in real time, and it confuses the heck out of my family members all the time. They're like, "We thought you were here." I'm like, "Babes, ain't been there for 6 months." Like it really like the later gram thing is my favorite thing, because to Kay's point, I can take time to craft a story, and even when I am capturing content like on a trip, I plan it out like in the Notion. Like I put, okay, this video we're gonna film, and then we're putting the phone down. So like I'm not filming like on a 46-hour train ride for 46 hours. Like
Yeah.
maybe doing an hour of content creation, and then the other 45 hours I'm minding my business. So I think planning it out too ahead of time helps me not have a camera in my own face for the whole entire time I'm on vacation. But I also don't have any of the different like messages, or similar to Anissa, the emails. Don't do that on my phone. Slide notifications off always. Like I have to actually go into an app, a work app, to check a thing, and that for me helps create boundaries between work and vacation.
No work emails on the phone. That's the big one. And how about you, Tonya? Is there anything that you do to keep those boundaries?
Yeah, so setting me out of office, no one has ever tried to contact me when I'm on annual leave, and I hope that continues forever. I think I'm in quite a unique situation because a lot of my trips, apart from my 9 to 5, tend to be work trips, press trips. But in terms of setting boundaries and making sure it's not all work, on that angle, I usually ask for the itinerary in advance, so I can like plan my shots, which means less time actually just creating work content while I'm out there. So I can quickly do everything that I need to do and then sort of go back to just enjoying being away.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So a lot of intentionality in how we're planning our trips, how we're executing the trips, and the boundaries that, that you're creating with everyone who interacts with you at work. I'm taking notes myself because as a freelancer, it is very hard to turn off my work brain. And I used to never have my work email on my phone, but now my work email and personal email are basically the same. So anywho, we are going to move on to the Q&A portion. We have some really good questions from the audience that I want to make sure that we get to. So the first one I have, do you utilize sick days for travel? I know some companies can be particular in how those days are used. So do any of you use your sick days to travel?
I mean, it depends on the company policy and what I can get away with. Let's put it that way. So, for example, if you work at a school where you have to bring in like a medical certificate every time you take a sick day, then that's not really going to work unless I'm like bringing in a doctor's note from Egypt, for example. But if you're in a situation where you can take a day or two, maybe extending a weekend, then yeah, I've definitely done that. But again, it really just depends on the situation and the context. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I know some companies also, they just give you, they call them personal days. And however you want to use them, that's on you. If you want to use them when you're sick, you want to use them to prolong your vacation. I've seen a lot of companies do that as well, that vacation days are separate from quote unquote personal days.
Yeah, and I think like again, it depends on the context. Like where I work now, we have 10 sick days, but 5 of those days can also be used interchangeably, as you said, as personal days. So it really just depends on the context and the company policy.
Mm-hmm. All right. Our next question, how do you handle the time difference in a smart way if you want to work remotely from a different time zone where the difference is more than a couple of hours? So I know, Sojourner, you especially have done some remote work. How did you handle that when there was a big time difference?
I have not done a huge time difference for this reason. I'm a morning person. So I've definitely contemplated going halfway across the world, but I cannot bring myself to work from 4 p.m. to midnight. Like, and that will be the hours I would have to work a lot of the time if I left this hemisphere for the most part. I would say like those time differences are pretty stark. I do use a World Time Buddy, I think is the name of the app, where you can put in any time zone and see how it aligns with your schedule just to see what that could look like. But I currently am trying not to do like a 12-hour time difference I think that gets really tricky as far as like scheduling things for me. I'm a social worker, so I still have a lot of meetings and a lot of face-to-face time. I think if I was in a different kind of role where I didn't have that much face-to-face interaction, I would organize my schedule a bit differently. But generally, I do within like a few hours. And that means I'm rearranging my schedule or making sure on my schedule that I'm blocking off when I'm unavailable, so that if they go to my Calendly, they can't schedule time with me as well. So that's my current smart way of doing it, is kind of knowing what you're willing to do and sacrifice. Because again, if you work somewhere, I work in Central Standard Time primarily. So if you work somewhere where you're working 4 p.m. to midnight, you're also sacrificing like nightlife or like doing things after work and wherever you're visiting. So it's kind of a trade-off. Like, what are you willing to do? And I think once you kind of know that, like, do I mind working nights and exploring during the day, or sleeping during the day, or running errands and then working? Or do I prefer to have a closer to a similar schedule? I think that helps picking your locations of where to work. But like for me, like Guatemala, Panama, like Mexico, all those are still within my time zone, thankfully. So it makes it relatively easy to go to those. But I think, again, kind of knowing what you're willing to do is a good place to start.
That's a really good point, because I'm a night person. So 4 p.m. to midnight sounds like a great schedule. That's when my brain is most fired up. But then you miss out on things like the nightlife or the, other aspects of the destination. So that's a really great point. And is there any cities in particular or places that you've worked remotely that you would say are the best? You or anyone else, I don't know if anyone else has had that experience of working, dabbling in the remote work. But what cities or places did you like the best?
I can answer. I can answer no. So pre this job, I actually had a remote job where I was kind of based in Berlin, and I love Berlin. Like, that's one of my favorite European cities. So that's a cool one. A lot of people are there now, but Mexico City is a fun place to be, like, food and culturally. I think you can learn a lot if you get out of like Roma Norte and Condesa, and you kind of see other parts of the city. But there's a lot of like different Mexican cities that are really nice. Panama City, I feel like, is a bit underrated as far as a place to work remotely. I know there's like a really large like Black expat or Black diaspora population there too. I've enjoyed that. And then Guatemala, like Antigua, is nice if you want like a smaller town kind of feel and you want to get out of the cities. I think that's another one as well. So obviously, like Central, South, Latin America are my favorites to work from, but that's just what I have experience with.
And I have a question for the panel this might be our last question, unless anyone else in the audience has some burning questions that they want to ask us, but this is a good one here. So it says, has the travel and side hustle impacted your career journey in your 9 to 5? How, and do you care about career progression, or are you more focused on your travel hustle? So this is a good one, since it is a lot to balance. So how has the traveling and, kind of prioritizing travel as a part of your life, has that impacted your career in any way? It's a deep one.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I can start. I wouldn't say it's directly impacted my career journey. I am currently more focused on my career journey and keeping it separate from like my travel stuff. But I will say having like a travel blog and being active on social media and creating content, it has given me a few skills that have transferred to my career, like making posters on Canva. I blew my manager out of the water. It was like, I made the little poster. I didn't even make it. It was a template. I changed the colors and they were like, oh my God, like, you're going to get a raise for this. How did you learn? And I was like, I don't know. I'm just gifted. But in reality, it's because I make like Pinterest pins for like my blog posts. And I always get complimented on like my communication skills. And it's like, no, that's because I go back and forth with, people trying to get me to do things on social media. So there are some transferable skills, even if you don't intend on making your travel side gig like a full-time thing or being super invested, there are some good skills that do transfer and can help you in your career.
I love that Canva trick. Impressing the people. Anyone else want to chime in on this? If your career has been impacted at all by, your travel and your travel side hustle, content creation, things like that?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer this, pretty
Mhm.
honestly. I would say it's definitely had an impact. I think a few years ago, before I started travel content creation, I was very much on sort of my set career path, going to the next level, working out how I'm going to navigate that. But I think as soon as sort of my travel content creation really picked up, my focus definitely did shift, and sort of my horizons widened to you being able to be successful out of the sort of corporate regular 9 to 5. And there's just so many different ways that people can be successful. And I think in terms of like money, when I realized how much could be made from content creation, and I made more from content creation than my full-time salary, I then thought, yeah, I think it's actually very worthwhile investing my time in this as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think for me, I've never been like I've been really good at school, so I thought I was gonna be like an academic for a long time, and I started traveling. Like, actually, I don't want to learn that much for that long. So that's like so that kind of how it changed for me. I think it's been fine. It's definitely helped because like everyone on my team knows what I do, like outside of work, like as far as like Sojourneys is concerned, and they share the content, they engage with it. So it hasn't like harmed, like, and I've still gotten promoted at work and whatnot. So it's happened. Like I've been able to do both. I think it's inevitable. I probably will become an entrepreneur at some point just because I grew up like my mom's an entrepreneur and my siblings have like entrepreneurial like endeavors. So it's kind of inevitable. But I think career wise, I didn't think I could even be remote as a social worker. So the fact I'm able to do that has kind of changed the way I look at what my career and kind of if I were to go full time, it wouldn't be just creating content full time because I still like what I do. So it's still a matter of finding how do I like do this, but over here with all of these other things, I think is more of what it is because this degree was expensive. I have the loans to prove it. So we're gonna use it for as long as we can. um, while also pursuing the passions that I want to do travel wise.
Mm-hmm. I hear you on those loans. How about you, Anissa? Have you found that your travel and content creation and things like that, has it impacted your career at all?
I wouldn't say it's directly impacted my career, but I think I'm in a bit of a different situation in the sense that, like, my career is being an international teacher. That means every couple of years or so, I'm relocating somewhere else. And that in itself is a certain kind of travel. So,
Mhm.
it's not like I don't have those opportunities to travel. It's just that sometimes they're more domestic, even though it's not technically where I'm from, if that makes sense. So, as Sojourner was saying, it's all about finding that balance. I like being in a new place, but I also like the stability of knowing where my nearest healthcare facility is, receiving mail, like knowing what grocery shop that I like. So it's kind of about just finding that balance.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, thank you all so much. We have run out of time for today, but I really appreciate all of you for taking time in the very busy schedules as we've been discussing for, the work meetings and lunch breaks and everything. I really appreciate you all coming and sharing your insights and opinions with us. So, I believe in the comments, somebody dropped the links to everyone here to their contact information, to Instagram, blogs, things like that. So if you want to keep up with our panelists, make sure to look in the comment section. There should be links to everyone, to how to find everyone. All right. Well, thank you so much, and hopefully we'll see you somewhere around in our travels. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Let me